So are you thinking of buying a piece of dirt? Well, good for you because I have the Duchess of Dirt with me today. Good morning, everyone. I am DeLynn Gaston with Moving Forward TV with your local market update, kind of local and market and actually all over. And this is not my usual co-host, Barry Horvath.
Not Barry.
But I have with me today Gigi Weber-Evans from Dynamic Title. Thank you for being my co-host today.
Oh, happy to fill in. Not a problem at all. Happy to do it.
So, you know, Gigi and I have known each other for many, many, many years, and I know a lot of you watching out there know Gigi as well. She's very, very well entrenched in the community and does a lot. And what did your tagline used to be? Because I just love that.
Pick me, GGD.
And
it was the Duchess of Dirt.
That's
Buy
right.
Dirt, sell dirt, refinance dirt, build dirt.
That's
I
right.
can help you.
I can help you with your dirt.
Yes.
And then she used to call herself the dirty girl.
We weren't supposed to say that.
But that one's funny. I love that.
It didn't work at the women's groups. It just
Didn't go over big. But Gigi has been in the title field for
just celebrated 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
We just say when it gets to that point, forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
Oh, yeah. That's
So she started when she was 5.
I'd be a pretty rough 40 then, or 35, right?
Yeah, right?
Young so well.
But Gigi has been around in the community for a long time, done title work for a long time, and there are a lot, and we've been talking about having her on the show for a while now because there's a lot of things that people don't know that go on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
In the title world. You know, it's so funny that, you know, we were talking before we started filming, and I had a client just yesterday. They're from New York and they're going to be moving down here, and they said to the real estate professional, and you might recognize this, they said to the realtor, they said, well, we're going to be flying down there over 4th of July weekend. Can we do it then? Can we have our closing then?
Yeah.
Mind you, we just got the contract. No, no, that is not possible to like have everything done with a mortgage. Yeah. So that's some of the stuff we wanted to talk about as well. So for the buyers out there or the sellers, it does take a little while. If the buyer is getting a mortgage, it takes a little bit longer because we have all of the mortgage processing to do. And the title people, although on a cash deal, they can do things a lot faster, but there are some things that slow them down. So we're going to start first with talking about the contract, Gigi.
Yes.
A to Z. Let's talk contract.
All righty. Well, that's the first thing that we do in order to start the process is we get a contract, we do a search on a property, and we also have to order now a municipal lien search. That's a little bit new since 2017, which is kind of new. But we have to check the municipalities to make sure the water bill's been paid, and you're not going to be stuck as a buyer with, an extra $300 water bill to pay before you can turn on your water. So,
I was kind of surprised that wasn't being done before.
Well, utilities aren't part of title insurance. Is like we sell a policy. What we try to do is perfect the title to the property, and that doesn't include a water
it never
bill.
did.
They don't record that.
So prior to that being recorded, whose job was that? See, I told you, we got to do a show about whose job is it anyway.
Exactly.
So whose job was it to do that? Was it like up to the real estate agent who took the listing to say to the seller, hey, did you pay all your water bills?
Not necessarily. I mean, in our world, it wasn't part of it. Anything that had to do with utilities is outside of closing. So I would imagine, would be the seller saying, hey, I'm sure I'm still going to have a water bill at the end of this transaction here.
But there's so much going on, they don't think of things like that,
Of course. They're living out of a suitcase in a box, I mean, for a long time prior to closing. So there's, now it's taken care of. So you're not going to run into having a $400 water bill before you move into your house and can turn on your water.
Good.
So that municipal lien search is something that we have to look at and order that. That takes like maybe 10 days to get that, 10
Oh,
business
so
days.
that one takes longer than.
Right.
Now, how long does the title search take?
Usually we can get them in 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
It's pretty quick with the title search report. We use Westcor, which is our underwriter, to do our searches. And when we do that, they, they're pretty used to the area and what's going on around us. So it doesn't take too long for that. But once we get it, now we have to do our homework. Is there a mortgage on it? Is there a paving assessment? Is there, there's just a million different things you can run across on a
Old
title
mortgages
search.
from
Yep.
something like Barnett Bank that went out of business 15 years ago,
Yep.
right?
Yep,
How
you
do you
gotta track
search
it down.
those? How do you track those things down?
Well, there's different.
Out of curiosity.
Yeah, there's different avenues that we can go to. I mean, usually you just get the information from the seller, and we're able to take care of that. But if there's something out there that has been there for Barnett Bank for a long
Right.
time. Barnett Bank was bought out by somebody, and then they may have been bought out by somebody. You got to kind of track it down.
Wow, so
and-
you have to do your detective work and find out who bought Barnett Bank.
Exactly.
And who bought their portfolio of, let's say, HELOCs, home equity
Exactly.
lines, to see.
Exactly.
Wow.
And again, you just brought up a good point, because Barnett Bank didn't actually just sell their mortgages to one person. There's many different, or one company usually. And then a HELOC would be a whole different story. By the way, a HELOC is a mortgage on your property. Just
Good
home
point.
equity line of credit. You
Yes.
receive a credit card, so you're thinking, oh, it's just a credit card, but it
Or a
isn't.
checkbook.
Yes, exactly. But there is a recorded mortgage on your property. It's usually a second mortgage.
It
most
absolutely
of the time.
is, right.
If it's not a second mortgage, it's a first mortgage.
Yes,
Basically.
if you don't have a first mortgage already, then it's in first position.
Right.
That's what we mean by first mortgage, second mortgage. Who's first? It's kind of like in line at Disney.
Yep.
Who's first?
And the first one to the courthouse wins. So I used to say that all the time. My dad would take the recordings to the courthouse, and one of the things I tease about it at a closing table is, you don't have a contract that you have with 12 other people, and you're running around to different title companies today trying to sell this property to all kinds of different people. So,
Right.
But anyhow, the first one of the courthouse wins pretty much. But
And then you have to put in your detective hat and try and find who did they sell this to. And that, I would imagine, takes a while, right?
sometimes it can. Most of the time, it's rare that you run into something from 20 years ago that wasn't satisfied. What we find out, and this is where it does happen, is a lot of mortgage companies used to turn around and they would send their satisfaction of mortgage to the seller, or to the
To
mortgage
owner
holder.
of the home.
Yeah, exactly. The owner of the home, and they wouldn't know what to do with it. I mean, they might have burned it with the mortgage. I mean, you don't know, but
Or put it somewhere for safekeeping and
yes.
forgot.
Well, how many times did you hear, "Oh, we got to burn the mortgage. It's
I know,
over with."
I
well,
know.
that was with it. Sorry. But so we have to get a new satisfaction
one
mortgage
created.
then and have it recorded of record so that now it's a smooth closing. So that's just one of the things that we have to do. Now, of course, we have to work with the lender to find out exactly what they're going to need from us. Is this property in a homeowners association? You need a PUD rider attached to your mortgage. Is it a second family? A second home for
Right.
somebody. So we have to add a endorsement for all these different things, all these different addendums that are to your contract. Addendums?
Mm-hmm.
And then, see, I speak title, you speak.
I know.
But same with one thing about that too. I just recently did a mortgage, and it did not involve an ALTA, and it did not involve a closing disclosure. We were required to do it on a HUD-1. And
Really? Private mortgage then?
Exactly. Well, this one was a reverse mortgage.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
So
Those are a little bit different as well.
And just to explain the difference, a HUD-1 was something that we used quite a while ago. It has the buyer and the seller's information on it. When they changed that, it also included the good faith estimate
Right.
on the back of a HUD-1. Now we use an ALTA. That's so we can balance with the lender's CD.
Right.
And the
And
figure
the
at the
lenders
bottom.
use a CD, closing disclosure, that has to balance with the title company's ALTA.
Right. So she speaks CD, I speak ALTA.
I speak mortgage, she speaks title.
Exactly. It's what we do. So, but we play well with
We
others.
do. We
Yeah.
have to play well in the sandbox. And that brings up a point. There's so many people that are involved in the transaction that have so much to do on their job. I've talked endlessly on this show about what the mortgage people have to do. And that's why I want to have Gigi on to tell us what the title people are doing while we're doing our mortgage stuff, what she's doing on her end.
Right. And then, to go back to where we were, once we have everything perfected, we have that in the processing department. And once all these things are accumulated, we have to order a survey. But we have to wait until everything's clear with the
To make
mortgage
sure
company, at
everything's
least to the
perfected.
point. Exactly. Because surveys cost, pretty good dollars.
Yeah, they do.
If the property doesn't appraise,
Right.
sometimes the transaction doesn't go through, unfortunately, and then we're holding the bag with a survey and an elevation certificate for $550.
And
So-
now when that survey comes in, you guys are checking it too, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
this is your neck on the line, so to
Heck
speak,
yeah.
right? You're making sure that you're insuring everything in these lines. So you
Right.
want to make sure nothing is coming over the line, right?
Exactly. I have run into a situation before where here's the survey, and then there's a pool, and the pool enclosure is hanging on the easement. So it's something that you have to do prior to closing is get what's called a vacation of easement.
What's an easement?
An easement is part of the property that might be owned by the utility company, or it could be not really an easement, but you're in your neighbor's backyard, kind of. It basically is an area that you should not have a pool enclosure on, or a
Shouldn't have
cement
anything
or
on it.
anything that can't be moved. That runs into problems, and then you have to vacate that easement. And sometimes it's not so easy to do. You have to get other people involved in it. You have to get their signatures that says, okay, yes, we can allow you to keep your pool enclosure on that little hump.
So these are things that slow it down. So their pool cage hung over the neighbor's yard or whatever. So did you have to go to the neighbor and say, hey, is that okay? Or how do you deal with things like that?
Well, sometimes it depends on where it is. We had to deal with the utility companies in that
Okay.
particular situation. If you have your fence and it's on a property that belongs to your neighbor, most of the time people don't even worry about it.
Right.
Sometimes they do. I mean, in one situation, one of my customers had a fence, and it was a large property, a very long fence that was actually the next door neighbor had taken about 3 feet of the property. 3 feet of the property going all this way. So in that particular case, the
Wow.
new buyer of this property had that fence had to be removed and placed in the correct spot, because that was, you're paying taxes on a lot, a big parcel, and you would like to use that hunk of dirt that somebody else has taken from you. So,
Right.
and that was a court battle a little bit. So,
Wow. So things can escalate that far to court and
Sure
things like that.
can.
So that's what you guys are looking at those surveys
Yep.
very closely for, and that knowing that that's what you're insuring on.
And that particular buyer, we were able to ammo him with the survey that shows, you still have this much more of your property that you could be using. But so he was able to use what we had provided to him, including his commitment for title insurance, his policy, and his survey, to take to somebody to get that fence moved over.
And that's just a small piece of what title insurance is all about.
Exactly,
And that's why it's
exactly.
so important. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens between from the time a buyer signs a contract to buy this house and you're all excited and yay, and to the time you're actually sitting at the closing table signing papers, A to Z. But it's not really A to Z, is it?
Exactly. Our job is from A, when we get the contract, to Z, when we issue the title insurance policy. So,
and you're signing right about T.
Yes. Yes, because as soon as the transaction's happening, first of all, don't forget to bring your spouse when you're signing a mortgage on a property in the state of Florida. We have homestead rights, and even if it's a non-borrowing spouse, just say the lady is the one that's getting the mortgage and her husband, the gentleman, is not actually part of he's not a borrower.
He's not on the loan.
He's not on the note.
Right.
And in my world, it's just a note.
Right.
And,
mine too.
Yeah, so there's a few differences. But that note does not have to be signed by the spouse, but the mortgage does, because if the lady does not pay the mortgage, the man has to get thrown out too.
Right.
So
that's why we need him to acknowledge. People ask me that a lot, actually, and that's a good point to bring up the difference. So just so that everyone is clear on this. So when someone is getting a mortgage, right, they say, oh, you have to call your mortgage lender. And, me as a mortgage lender, we give mortgages. And there's a difference. If, like Gigi said, if you have, let's say, just the wife is on the loan and the husband is only going to be on the title to the property. Well, because Florida's a community property state, by law, he has to sign the mortgage, not the loan. There is a difference. The loan is what obligates the person signing the loan papers, the note, obligates them to pay back a loan. The mortgage is just the instrument that gets recorded in the land records. That's the lien on the property. And that's what the husband has to sign as well. The non-borrowing spouse has to sign that as well. Basically, it's him acknowledging, yes, I realize my wife is putting a loan on this property, and if she doesn't pay it, I get booted out as well.
Exactly.
Like you said, yes. But they don't have to be on the title to the property all of the time, right?
Well, there's
was
a
a
question
difference
that we've run across several different times. There were, it's called practicing law, and when we're issuing a title insurance policy, we have to figure this stuff out. So, and it's still in question. That's why they call it practicing law. So, if you don't own the house, but you are a non-borrowing spouse required to sign the mortgage on this property, do you have to be on the deed? Well, I have had many people tell me, no, they don't have to own it, because they're just they don't have to own it to sign the mortgage, but some mortgage companies say, yes, they do need to be on the property. We get a contract, that is like our Bible number one, so to speak. We have to go by what that contract says that we're supposed to do to issue a title insurance policy.
Right.
So once we get that and we decipher, okay, Jane Doe is purchasing this property, and then we find out that Jane Doe is married and John Doe is going to need to sign that mortgage. Well, some mortgage companies have required that John Doe be on title. As far as the title aspect, I have talked to a couple of different people at Westcor, and a couple of different people say, yes, he needs to own the property. A couple of people have said, no, he doesn't need to own the property. So,
and as you said, a couple of lenders have said, yes, he does need to own the property,
Yeah.
and a couple of lenders have said, no, he does not.
Right.
That is really interesting. So that's something that's, and that's one of those things, well, whose call is it? Who's actually allowed to make the call on that?
well, that's where we run into problems.
I would imagine the title insurance company, because they're the ones who are insuring the title.
Mm-hmm.
We as the lender, I don't think that we're allowed, my personal opinion, I don't think we're allowed to make that decision.
Well, all we're worried about is whether that mortgage, if two things with title insurance. Number one, you're issuing an owner's policy. Are the people that are on that owner's policy, the buyer to the property, and first, are they the only owners of this property? That's what matters. Can they own this property free and clear of all encumbrances? Okay, so that's what an owner's policy does. A mortgagee policy just guarantees that this loan company is in first lien position. Okay?
Really?
Yes. So if they're in first lien position, that's what we have to do, is make sure that they have, we have an insurable insurance policy will cover this mortgage. So whether the guy's in title or not, as long as he signs the mortgage, because of the state laws for homestead exemption, that's an insurable product. Okay? So,
Interesting.
but whether they need to own it or not, just say, for instance, your husband and you don't want your wife to be on the title because this is now going to be a investment property. Well, an investment property doesn't really require that the wife
Spouse.
sign the mortgage.
Yeah.
The spouse sign the mortgage, but it could be their homestead in the future. They could all of a sudden turn around,
Change their mind and decide to move into
Yeah,
that property.
So some of my investors were very upset when we said, no, you're going to have the spouse sign the mortgage. But then there was something that they came up with, and this is, I've been doing this for 30 years, so this is practicing law,
I know.
I mean, so
They change things so often.
I know.
Yeah.
So at this point, we were told by our underwriter, what does the buyer want to do? Does the buyer want this person on the property? Do they not want that person on the property?
Right, because in divorce situations,
Yeah.
they don't, they're not divorced yet, but they're in the midst of getting a divorce, and per the divorced settlement agreement, the wife is getting the house or whatever, so the husband has to get refinanced off of the loan, so the loan is just in her name, but the divorce isn't finalized yet,
Exactly.
so we have to get him to sign, and, it really gets sticky sometimes.
Yes, and I hate those situations,
I know.
because even though we're allowed to do these products that we have to do to be able to insure the property, I mean, we're the ones that are the one telling the spouse,
know.
I'm sorry, you have to put your wife on there. That's what the mortgage company is wanting.
I know.
You could end up having this be your homestead someday. And, the one guy's like, well, I have $1 million house on the Gulf of Mexico, I don't want to live in this, $200,000 rental.
Little rental
Thank you
property.
anyway. But it happens, so.
Yeah. Boy, that like you said, practicing law, that's funny. And I know that there's several other things we wanted to touch on. So let's talk about, I'm going to have you back another time to talk about some of these things we talked about
mobile
during the
home
break.
is what I'm running into a lot right now.
All right, so I was just going to say, which one of these things that we've made notes on here?
I picked
let's
mobile
talk
home now at this point because one of the most important things right now is that we're running into, the problem that we're running into is that somebody doesn't have the mobile home title. Well, there's two reasons why you can't have a title. Number one, either you purchased it without one. Number two, maybe that title's already retired. If it's already retired, we don't have to worry about it. I mean, that is like, if you ever wanted to have to keep track of that piece of paper, and if you don't have it, there's issues. Right now, you can look at the window to find out the RP tag number, but it's not necessarily that the RP tag matches up with the property. We've run into that. If they don't have their identification number for that mobile home, if it's a single wide, there's one title. If there's a double, it's two titles. There's even triple wides out there. There's 3 titles. And if you don't have
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
A double wide has 2 titles. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep.
Because it hits the road in 2 pieces.
Yep.
In 2 halves.
And
that makes sense.
And in Florida, they treat mobile homes separate than they treat mobile homes as a car. So it has to have those titles to remove it. Now, we can retire it by doing an affidavit that the seller or the buyer or whoever signs to retire that mobile home, that it's affixed to the property and it doesn't have a tongue in a groove or something like that. And
wheels and tongue have to be removed. That's
Exactly.
Any lender that's the very first question we ask. Wheels and tongue have to be removed.
Exactly. So they can sign that affidavit. We have the 2 mobile home titles. I go to the clerk of court, have that affidavit along with the 2 titles recorded of record, and then I head downstairs to the tax collector's office, and they review that information and then provide a certificate that says that the mobile home titles are retired. we can transfer them, but you're stuck handling that piece of paper. And I just ran into a situation.
And once they're retired, you can't move that home again.
You can, as soon as you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and get a title to that property and remove it from the property.
So you have to retitle it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
What it costs, I'm not sure. I probably should find out because people have asked me that before, and I don't really know the answer to that at this point, if they charge.
But for what it's worth, from a lending standpoint, no lender can do it. It's a Fannie Mae rule. If it's been moved once, you can't. Once it's there, if it's moved again, we can't finance it.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
we learn something
See?
from each other every day. I have a situation where the husband passed away. All the mobile home titles are in his name. The wife is on the property, on the dirt, and but now they just made a different rule. Mike Fasano is a wonderful guy here, our tax collector in Pasco County anyway. He now allows a spouse to sell a property, if they're on title, with the mobile home title, they can sign off as the spouse.
Oh, good.
Instead of having to get a new title. But if it's a retirement, you have to have it in the person's name that's going to be signing that. So
just the fact that it was in a will doesn't make a difference, huh?
no.
Because it's a titled.
No, they're allowing it now.
Title thing. Good.
That spouse now is
Can do
entitled,
that.
can sign it without because it doesn't say, a title says or, like
Right.
husband or wife. Or husband and wife. Dirt is always and. But a mobile home is like a vehicle. It
Right.
can be or. So, and then the other one, the people don't even have a Florida title. This property, this mobile home was put on a Florida property, and the title is Georgia. But we don't have that title.
Therein lies a problem. See all of the things that go on behind the scenes that nobody knows about, that poor Gigi's running around like crazy, and all these title issues and things that are coming up. Gigi, this is so much good information, and I really do want to have you back because we have still some stuff that,
Heck yeah.
really good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this as
Yeah,
well.
I can bore you all day long.
You know what? Most of our audience is realtors and home buyers, and this is stuff that I'm sure is interesting to them as well, if you're buying a home or selling a home. Anyway, so we appreciate you guys watching. I did just want to mention really quickly that our charity of choice, West Pasco Business Association, WPBA.biz, we do still have funds available under the HEART program, which is for people who are struggling with rent right now. So please check that out if you know anyone struggling with paying their rent. And Gigi, thank you so much again.
Thank
I know
you.
I'm running out of time really fast, so we are today and every day, everybody.
Moving forward.
See you next week. Thanks for watching.
Bye.